Welcome to the Joy School Podcast. Real talk about what it takes to create your happiest, healthiest, and most dynamic life. And now, here's your host, transformational life coach, happiness strategist, and best-selling author, Kristi Ling Spencer.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new season of the Joy School Podcast. I am so happy and grateful that you're back with me for another episode of the show and yet another season, season 3. And I am super excited for the fantastic topics that we're going to cover this season, as well as a couple of special guests that we're going to be having on for you. So lots of great things planned. I have been spending this little break in between seasons working on all of the content for the launch of my upcoming membership program called the Joy School. And I cannot tell you how amazingly it is coming together. You know, when you picture something in your mind and sometimes it doesn't turn out as good as you pictured, this is the opposite of that. This is exceeding what I envisioned and what I imagined. And it is just going to be epic. So if you'd like more info on that, you can just hop over to jointhejoyschool.com. And there's some great information on there about when the doors are going to open, what's going to be included in the program. And you can jump on the VIP wait list there to be the first to know when the doors open. It's going to be fantastic. It's really like a gym membership for the soul is the way it's coming together. And it just feels good. Like I'm jumping inside now, adding content and making little tweaks. And it just is such a beautiful space to be in online and so supportive. So many good things going to be offered in there. So I can't wait to share it with you. Can you tell I'm excited? All right. I also want to say happy fall. So as this show premieres, it is the very beginning of fall, which is my favorite season. When I was growing up, summer was my favorite season. But as I have evolved, first of all, I just can't take the summer heat like I used to be able to. I'm definitely a warm weather girl and I love being out in the sunshine and being outdoors. But the weather in the fall, it is to me like paradise and I just love it. I think September, October, early November are some of the most beautiful, beautiful times of year in so many places, so many areas of the world, including where I live. I'm actually based in both Texas and Los Angeles, in Houston and Los Angeles. I go back and forth quite a bit. And both of those areas, fall is the absolute most beautiful season. So I'm so excited it's here. I also feel like fall is really a time for us to turn inward and look at our connections to ourselves and the world and to kind of slow down a little bit. And this is really within the cycles of nature because fall is the time that the trees lose their leaves. It's the time that things in nature slow down and catch their breath, right? And it's a great cue for us to be in sync with that and do the same. And so that is actually part of what has inspired the topic for today's episode, which is all about how nature heals and fuels us and how it can lift our joy and our happiness and improve our emotional fitness. And so I truly believe that this is so true. I believe connecting with nature is one of the number one things we can do to heal our soul and to feel grounded and to feel like we are connected to something bigger than ourselves, right? I can remember a time in my life, the very first time I ever went to New York City. And you might be able to relate to this story because there's a certain feeling that happens when you are disconnected with nature for a few days or for a long period of time. So the first time I ever went to New York City, and maybe this has happened to you before, I was so excited to go see this incredible city. And I do love New York, but I stayed in Midtown and I was young. I was in like my mid-20s and I'm there. It's the first time, so excited to be in this beautiful, incredible city that I'd heard about my whole life. And after a few days, I started to feel this strange, empty feeling inside of me. And it was palpable, like it was noticeable. And I was like, what is going on? Why do I feel like I'm in such a weird funk? What is this strange feeling? And it was a very distinctive feeling. And I looked out the window of my hotel room and there were taxi cabs and horns honking and people everywhere and concrete and glass everywhere I looked. And way down the street, I could see one little tree sticking up out of the sidewalk. And when I spotted that tree, it dawned on me. And I was like, wow, I think I'm feeling this way because I literally have not seen a tree for days until just now, that little tiny one sticking out of the sidewalk. I have not seen a tree for days. I have not been in nature for days in any way. For days, I had been surrounded by concrete and buildings and people and glass and furniture. And that is all I was exposed to for several days. And I started to feel it physically. So when I realized this and I had this moment of like this little mini epiphany, I took some time out of my day and I walked. And it was about a mile, but I walked up to Central Park. And I had never been to Central Park. This was my first time in New York, but I knew it was there, of course. So I just asked the concierge in the hotel, how do I get there? I walked up and I immediately felt better. I immediately felt whole again and back and connected to myself and to nature. And so really it is so important. Like you will feel it physically within your body and your soul when you are disconnected from nature. Albert Einstein said, look deep into nature and then you will understand everything better. I believe that is so true. Just like that walk up to Central Park helped me understand that we as humans absolutely are part of nature, but it's more than that. We have a deep connection with nature that needs to be nurtured and cared for as part of our self-care practice. There is so much to be received and discovered. We are directly connected and part of the natural world. And when we get out of alignment with this, it can affect our mental and physical health and emotional well-being overall. There is so much science that shows the healing power of nature also. I was just doing some research on this recently, and I was on the website for the National Library of Medicine, and there is evidence that has been found by a number of scientific studies that exposure to nature is not just good for our overall health. It's good for specific parts of our health, including cognitive function, blood pressure, sleep, overall mental health, and of course, our overall physical health. But even more, there are so many systems within our body, natural systems that need the connection with nature in order to function at their highest level. I also believe and have experienced that immersing ourselves in nature is one of the quickest ways to lift our mood and boost our happiness. And there's so much joy to be found there in little things and also within nature and connecting to other humans. So a good example of this is there is a nature preserve near my house that I absolutely love to go walking through. And yesterday morning, I was walking with my husband and I have a favorite tree that I love walking by this. Do you ever walk by a tree that just is so magical looking? Like maybe it's got a little hole in it where you can imagine little fairies living, or it's all gnarled, or just so huge and majestic that you can imagine all that it's seen in its lifetime. I think trees are absolutely magical. And I was walking by my favorite tree. And of course, I had to stop and look at the beautiful bark and its trunk. And within the trunk, there's a little, like a notch in there. And somebody else who clearly loves nature and loves the forest had placed a painted rock, a jack-o'-lantern, a little painted rock inside this tree for other people to find and delight in. And I just found it so amusing. But also I just thought, whoever this person is that paints rocks and leaves them in the forest for people to find and enjoy, what a great idea. What a beautiful way to connect with other people in nature and to connect with nature in an artistic and creative way, right? So fun. So I just love that. There are so many ways to get connected. And if you're not lucky enough to have a nature preserve or a forest near where you live, there are always parks to be found or little gardens, community gardens, or even your own garden. You can even do a windowsill garden, right? It can be that simple. I know these are very popular in New York City. And for good reason. So this episode is all about challenging yourself and ourselves to deepen our connection to nature. You can do this in ways that resonate with you. You can do it through a garden. I love to garden. I love to grow herbs and vegetables. You can do it walking on trails or in a park, spending time by bodies of water, connecting with animals, right? That's a really big one. And if you have a pet, this is a great way to connect. And it really is just so good for the soul. If you go through periods where you can't get outside much, so I found that to be the truth this summer for me. We had 2 whole months here in Houston where it was so hot. If I stepped outside, my skin would literally burn and it was triggering migraines. It was so uncomfortable. I would be sticky and drippy within 60 seconds of walking outside, and it just didn't feel good. And I noticed that after a while, I started to get that same familiar feeling that I had those years ago in New York City, where I was just feeling disconnected with nature. And so I had to create ways to connect with nature from inside my house, or when it's too hot or too rainy or whatever it is to go outside, right? So some of those ideas are you can try planting a little indoor garden, nurturing your house plants and connecting mindfully with them. I actually give mine names. And taking a bath with salts and essential oils and herbs is also a great way to connect with the water element and with nature in the garden. Or just listening to some sounds on a streaming device. There are actually studies that show listening to sounds like rain falling or frogs can really lift your mood and bring you peace. So all of this can make a difference even when the weather isn't conducive to step outside. But when you can step outside, absolutely make an effort to do that. So know that all things are connected. And tap into your love for all beings, even those you might fear or not understand really well, right? When we recognize that we're all connected and we're all part of this beautiful, natural environment, it really is such a great feeling. You feel so grounded when you see all things as a part of you and you see yourself as part of all things. And simple, tiny little acts like recognizing that the little spider or the little bug in your house is part of our natural world and part of us, and we're part of them. And these little creatures are just trying to live their life, and maybe they got a little lost. When you can do an act of kindness and scoop them up and put them outside instead of squashing them like many people do, believe it or not, this is part of connecting with nature. It will bring a noticeable connection in your heart. The act of kindness, but also just respecting our natural world, right? And the fact that we're all connected. It's a little thing, but it can make a big difference. So with that, I want to share 2 very powerful and enchanting ways that you might want to consider going deeper when it comes to enhancing your connection with nature. And by the way, these are both, I think, very magical and very tangible, and also just fun to learn about. It's more just to think about in expanding our thoughts in how we can connect. So the first one is the concept of forest bathing. So I love this term, and this is relatively new, this term, but the concept is not. So the term forest bathing was coined in the 1980s in Japan, and it's called, I want to make sure I pronounce this right, Shinrin Yokai, I believe is the way they say it. I could be wrong there. SHINRIN-YOKI. And the translation of that is forest bathing. And this was recognized in the 80s as a powerful way for people who were really stressed out during the tech boom to find some peace and restorative healing. But the concept of connecting with nature in this way, immersing ourselves amongst the trees and the ecosystem and wildlife as a form of healing has been around for centuries. There's nothing complicated about it. It's just about placing yourself amongst nature on purpose for a short time or a longer period, whatever resonates with you, and mindfully knowing and connecting with all that's around you. When you're walking through the forest or walking through the park, try taking a walk through the woods or just going up and being under some trees. Touch the leaves on the trees, smell the scents of the different plants and the mulches on the ground, right? Because they have such a distinctive scent, and feel the energy. Allow yourself to feel the energy of the connection between you and all that's around you. And Here's one more that I also find, and it's related to the forest bathing concept, but I find this also really enchanting because there are so many beautiful structured ways popping up of how to enjoy this. And if this whole concept resonates with you strongly, you might want to consider this one, and that is looking into ecotherapy. So ecotherapy is really just a term that refers to any type of nature-based program that's guided in some way, that's designed to support your soul and mental health in conjunction with connecting to nature. It's a science-backed concept that spending time immersed in nature in very intentional ways is great for emotional and physical health. And this can actually include programs like guided forest bathing. They actually have guides that can take you through this process if you're not really sure how to do it on your own. But honestly, forest bathing really is just as simple as a nature walk. It can be that simple. But there are guided programs that fall under the concept of ecotherapy. There are wilderness experiences you can sign up for. There are sound baths in nature. If you've never experienced a sound bath, I highly, highly recommend it. I encourage you to Google sound baths in your local area. You can look on Meetup or you can look on Facebook events and see if you can find them. They are a beautiful experience. There are also guided hikes, meditation circles that take place in nature. There's full moon yoga. All kinds of programs you can look at that really fall under the concept of ecotherapy. There are even programs connecting with animals like goat yoga or equine therapy. There are so many options for this. There is definitely something for everybody, no matter what it is that strongly resonates with you. There is something for you that can align that will help you get connected in this way. And like forest bathing, the concept of ecotherapy, or some people call it green therapy, is not new. There is nothing new about this. This is something that different cultures have embraced for thousands of years. And there are even spiritual practices that are based and centered around our connection with the natural world. The Druids knew a lot about this, and even the modern day Druids, this is the basis of their spiritual practice, is our overall connection with nature, right? Nature is part of who we are, and we are a part of nature. And when we are not aligned with that, it can affect us in so many ways. And that's why it was so important to me to do an episode on this. And I felt like the season premiere being aligned sort of with the first week of fall was such a great time to cover this topic, because I really feel fall offers some of the best opportunities for some of what we've talked about on the show today. First of all, the weather is conducive, right? But also, it really is such a beautiful time to be observing the natural cycles of nature and how we align with that, right? All right. So with that, it's time for the Joy School Habits, the part of the show where I challenge you to try creating a small positive new habit that can have big impact in your life. And of course, today's Joy School Habit has to align with our topic of the show. And that is to find some small way each day, no matter how busy you are, to connect with nature in some way, even if it's just for a minute or two, to really do it mindfully. You can just make it as simple as watering your houseplants and even talking to them. I have a fern named Kai, and I talk to her almost every evening. Or just go for a quick walk around your block and notice what your neighbors are doing with their yards and their gardens and the trees, right? Water your outdoor plants, water your garden. Just step outside to the garden for a minute and look at what's blooming and growing. Or look to connect with birds and insects that are outside, right? Your animal friends. Whatever calls to you, make it a habit to mindfully do something each day, no matter how small, that reminds you that connection to nature is so important, that gives you that feeling and boosts that connection and enhances those feelings. You will lift up your day. You will energize yourself because nature brings us energy. So I do encourage you, if you can, to make this part of your morning practice. Just a minute or two mindfully connecting with nature can make such a huge difference. Now, if you're too slammed in your mornings or you already have morning practices that work for you, this can also be done in midday. You can step outside on your lunch break, or it can be done in the evening. Sometimes an evening walk is just beautiful. I especially love that here. We have a few months out of the year where the mosquitoes aren't too bad. We sort of plan our nature connection around mosquito season here in Houston. I know anyone that lives in Texas or mosquito heavy areas can relate to that. But the fall is one of those times of the year when there are hardly any mosquitoes. The weather is beautiful. The breezes are beautiful. Just such an amazing time to step outside, even if it's only for a minute. So that is today's Joy School habit. Even on your busiest days, remember, I need to pause and connect with something from the natural world, and then just give it a minute or two every day. Now, of course, longer when you can. And I definitely encourage you to talk to your friends and your family about your desire to do this more, to get outside more, and maybe even make it a group effort. And share the concepts of forest bathing or ecotherapy, because I really think they're so enchanting, so beautiful. Making them a part of our lives can definitely elevate our joy, elevate our mental health, elevate our happiness, and elevate our overall well-being. All right. If you enjoyed this episode of the show, I would be so grateful if you would take just a couple of seconds to leave a review over on Apple Podcasts or your favorite platform. This really helps the show reach more people. And I do read them all. Thank you so much. I would love to give a shout out to my friend Linda Joy, who is the publisher of Aspire magazine. I was on the cover of the most recent issue of Aspire. You can find them at aspiremag.net. Packed full of wonderful articles about leveling up your life and having more joy and inner peace at aspiremag.net. Thanks so much. And the reason I'm giving her a shout out is because she actually has listened to the show and took time to write a review. So you might actually hear me give you a shout out if you take time to leave a review as well. And be sure to connect with me over on Instagram and Facebook. I love hearing from you and connecting with you there. I'm very involved in those communities. And you can visit my website at KristiLinkSpencer.com, where you can download some free gifts, including my brand new free video workshop that I have mentioned a few times on the show, 11 Habits of the Happiest People. And there are other supportive resources for you on my website as well, including links to sign up for the waitlist for the Joy School and get more information on that. So I am sending you so much love. And until next time, remember, you've got what it takes to create more amazing days. And more amazing days make up a pretty amazing life. Have a fantastic week, my beautiful friends, and I will see you soon. Cheers.